Hey everybody. This is the June Circle of Dark Mother meeting, and today we're going to talk about building a relationship with Lilith. We do have monthly meetings the first Sunday of every month at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So if you're in a different time zone, you have to do the calculation. And we also do other things. We do have special meetings and such. If you have interest in um, the group and finding out what we're doing, we do have a website, which is circulusmatrum.com. And let me put that in the chat for anybody. And on the video, I will attach it once I upload. On our website, it does have a contact form where you can sign up for our newsletter. And we send a month to 2 month newsletter with what's coming up, um, articles, just a whole bunch of stuff. Our tradition is such that we do a little bit of everything. It's not non-dogmatic, and it's basically whatever everybody in the group does. I personally work with Lilith, and I'm a Gnostic Kabbalist. Richard is a member of the group. He's a ceremonial magician and a whole bunch of other stuff. He's got a lot of experience, and we have many other members. So, any interest you have, you can go to the website and send in a note or ask to get added to the newsletter. So let's get going. So today we're going to talk about building a relationship with Lilith. So the first thing from my opinion, my standpoint, my opinion is before you build a relationship with Lilith, it's which Lilith. And the reason I say that is because Lilith has been around for at least 6,000 years. So as back as far as we can trace recorded history. The first written language that we can decipher is from about 3500 BC in Mesopotamia in cuneiform. And Lilith is mentioned under a different name in the Epic of Gilgamesh. There's also references to her and different aspects of her throughout Mesopotamia into Judaism, from Judaism into um, European traditions, and into more modern traditions like Kimbanda in Brazil, and many, many other traditions into the modern occult. So the question is, which Lilith are you in touch with, or do you want to be in touch with? And because of all these texts and these myths, she's a goddess and a demon of wind, night, and passion in Mesopotamia. Now, when I say goddess and demon, that sounds like a contradiction. But in Mesopotamia, goddesses or gods were descendants from the primordial pair of gods, where demons were any entity, god, goddess, spirit, that didn't follow the rules. There were rules set by the gods, and there were entities that didn't follow those rules. And Lilith was one of those. Surprise, surprise, if you work with her, right? Um, so that's why she can be both a goddess and a demon. In Mesopotamian tradition, demon does not mean evil or anything like that. It just means not following the rules. Um, a lot of people question whether she was actually a goddess because there are classes of wind spirits whose names are very close to hers. But the Sumerian Assyrian god list, which was written during the Assyrian period, lists all of the names of Sumerian gods and goddesses along with their name in Assyrian. And Lilitu is mentioned in that god list. So she has to be a goddess, or she wouldn't have been in that list. In Judaism, which they picked her up from Mesopotamia when the Jewish people were in exile in Babylon, and she is in myth said to be the first wife of Adam. She is considered the mother of demons, a succubus, and the partner of Samael, actually an archangel in Judaism and Kabbalah, not a demon, interestingly, although he's a very dark entity in those myths. She's sometimes the consort of God in Kabbalah. So God Most High is sometimes paired with Lilith as his consort. In Kabbalah as well, one of the most famous rabbis, Isaac Luria, says that Lilith is the perfect partner to the primordial unified human being. So, what a human being would be like in complete, I guess, evolution toward their enlightened self. And Lilith is the perfect partner. In Gnosticism, she is the dark feminine wisdom, also called the dark Sophia. In the left-hand path, she's the queen of hell and consort of Lucifer. In some modern culture and some modern occultism, she's the queen of vampires. And she's a goddess who is a feminist icon. And for many of us, including me, she brings transformation. And these are just some of her aspects. But these are ones that are pretty common for people to work with. So which Lilith are you connecting with? And that's important because how you encounter her, how you build relationship is going to be a little bit different. In all of these paradigms, Lilith is the dark mother who pushes her children forward, driving them to be their true selves. So what that means is she is an entity that wishes us to be unapologetically ourself, um, which means that she wants us to be us, minus the programming that society and religion and all these other things put on us. And that's not saying she wants us to be evil. Um, you know, the mother of demons version, or to some people, is evil. I don't consider her that way, even in that form. But she does want us to be us and to not let people push us around and force us to be who we're not. And some of these aspects are pretty compassionate, meaning that they're still kick your butt if you don't do what you need to, but still compassionate about how they do it. Some of them are pretty severe. Obviously the mother of demons aspect is a little more severe than maybe the um, feminist icon goddess, um, just because the nature of that avatar and the personality that's being brought forward. So the other question is Lilith calling you? I'm not saying you can't go seek her, but in a lot of cases, she calls you. And the ways this can happen is if you've already been called by her, you're pretty aware of the signs, I would imagine. Her name or names, depending on which one, start popping up around you. You may have dreams of her or her avatar, snakes, owls, other night creatures. Um, Weird coincidences will pop up in your life and or areas of your psyche that need you to look at your being at you, and you're challenged regularly. And that's because she wants you to be unapologetically you. And so what that means is if you're not doing that, she will bring stuff up to be like, look at this, look at this. You need to look at this. Um, Negative relationships, she definitely will bring to light, like, dump this relationship because it is not working, and she will bring it to the forefront and make it clear. For me, I first encountered Lilith as an early teen, so like a preteen, where I saw a comic that depicted Lilith in the Garden of Eden as Adam's first wife. I was enthralled by the idea that there was somebody else in the Garden of Eden because I grew up in the 60s and 70s. So, everyone knew the Garden of Eden story, but there's this extra person. And so it really caught my attention even as a young preteen. But I really sort of forgot about it until my early 30s. I left the church. I was a youth pastor in the Christian church. I left the church for a lot of reasons, and not against churches, just wasn't, it was a pretty strict church, and it just was not for me. And I was drawn to Gnosticism and Kabbalah and found Lilith in both of those traditions, which brought me back to her. And I was having all kinds of synchronicities that were happening where I couldn't ignore her. As I said, her name popped up over and over. I started having dreams of her. And I was forced to deal with a lot of parts of myself I had ignored and even hid from myself. And I think that was part of what made me leave the church too. Because, and again, this isn't to diss the church for those who it works for, but as I said, I was a youth pastor and I was really struggling with the patriarchal nature. There were a lot of things I was struggling with, and that's because I was struggling with who I was and what I believed versus what I was being told to believe. So I believe that was her doing too. Interestingly, I didn't put this in here, but all of the pastors in the church I was in would get together on Sunday morning before the service and pray. And I remember praying, God, show me who you are. Show me who you really are. And the next thing I know, Lilith pops up, which was quite intriguing and a little scary at first. Um, the whole idea that this dark woman or dark female entity was contacting me was scary when I was part of a Christian tradition that told me that, that was not possible. But she showed me it obviously was. That was over 25 years ago that I left the church and became a devotee to her. Um, so yeah, it's been quite a while. Dating myself, I'm 62 now, so um, didn't come to her as early as I would have liked, but I've had 25 years so far. Even if these things aren't happening to you, the very fact that you have interest in her may be her spirit calling to you and asking you to seek a relationship with her. Who will she work with? There's a lot of confusion over who Lilith will work with. I've seen authors and people on the internet say all kinds of things I disagree with. And that's fine if that's their belief, but it's not my experience. I've seen people say she'll only work with women and that she hates men. I've also seen it's cultural appropriation to work with Lilith if you're not Jewish, and many other things. As a guy, I obviously disagree with the first part, and I'm not Jewish, so I obviously disagree with the second. And my reasoning is yes, in her myth cycle, she was treated horribly by Adam, by God the Father. Um, she didn't have a great experience, but I don't believe she really hates men. She does, I believe, hate that which treats women and anybody else in a bad way. Any hierarchy, patriarchy, anything that is stopping people from their own power. So she doesn't like men that treat women or others poorly, but that doesn't mean she hates men. Um, and it's really about people that demean or dominate, because that's what was done to her in the myth cycle. I also don't believe it's cultural appropriation, because Jewish religion demonized her. They put her aside as what they called the divorced woman, which shouldn't be a problem, but in that it was. It was that men could be divorced, but women were something was wrong with them if they were divorced, um, because of patriarchal beliefs. Now that's not all of Judaism. Again, not dissing Judaism, but the tradition at times did that. And that's not to say Jewish people can't work with her either, but it is the fact that she predates Judaism and she was considered a demon, not deity. So it's hard really to say that you have to be Jewish. More rightfully, you need to be Mesopotamian, but we don't really have anybody running around that identifies as Mesopotamian. I do have a good friend who's a writer writing a book right now on Lilith, who is Palestinian, and her family does come from the area, but again, she's not Babylonian or Sumerian. Um, so I also believe that a deity that is all about you being unapologetically you is not going to be tripped up on your gender or your religion. What I believe she desires in someone is a desire to be their authentic self, a desire to help others do the same thing. devotion to the relationship with her, spending the time and doing the work. And that's with yourself as much as her. It's not as much about, you know, devotion to her, but devotion to the relationship. And that means spending time um, in having some kind of relationship with her and working on you finding your authentic self. And I don't believe it matters about your gender, your race, your culture, your religion, or any other human construct. So how do you go about building a relationship? Um, excuse me one second. As I said in slide one, how you work with her will be dependent on which aspect you're working with. Um, However, there are some general areas that will be the same across her forms. One, if possible, build a small or large altar to her. If you're in a situation where you can't build a true altar, that's okay. I know there's people that live with parents or roommates. Excuse me again. I've been having this cough for a bit. If you can't build an altar, it's okay. Simply put some kind of a picture, a statue, or even an object that you've dedicated to her. It could be an owl figurine, a snake figurine, a rock that makes you think of her. Just something that can be a touch base between you and her. Now, if you want to go further and do a bigger altar with more detail and multiple images and all that, that's totally cool too, of course. But it's not going to stop her if you can't afford or in your situation cannot build a giant altar to her. That's not what she's about. You need to spend time with her every day. Now, that doesn't mean you have to get up in the morning and spend your whole day. We all probably have families, work, um, stuff you got to do. But it is about making sure that you are making a touch point with her every day. And that can be as easy as just talking to her, doing a little bit of meditation. Meditation comes in many forms. It doesn't have to be what we consider meditation in the West because it's one of the base Buddhist practices, which is where you sit and just sort of focus on clearing your mind. You can do that. That's a great practice, but you can also do visualization where you visualize her in front of you and have a meditation that way. You can do mantras. You could repeat her name over and over again in your head, outwardly, but you can just talk to her. I think short reflective periods um, every day is really more important than doing some big ritual like once in a while. I mix it. I do something every day. I talk to her a lot, but then I do weekly, bi-weekly, if something's going on, I do a bigger ritual. And that's my practice. But since I'm Gnostic, which means experiential knowledge of my beliefs, I believe that anyone should do what is called to them. And Lilith will tell you what she wants, believe me. Um, Whether that's you hear her voice or you have a feeling or you see synchronicities that tell you, you'll get the feeling what's working and what's not. I've had people say that they feel like they're not hearing her. And I think the biggest thing is we doubt or we aren't really listening, or we get caught up in thinking we're not doing enough. This is a big one I hear where people are like, well, I didn't build a big altar and I'm not doing a big enough or complex enough ritual. That's not, again, the most important thing. So don't believe that she's ignoring you because you're not doing these big workings. Watch your dreams and synchronicities because she often speaks in symbols and circumstance. Um, and as I said, often we think she's not speaking, but we're actually not listening. And that's because, pop culture, and I love science fiction, fantasy, horror. We see things like these TV shows with witchcraft where, the deity appears full form. Now that can happen, but I don't think it's going to happen every day. um, for everybody. I think really it's not about the flashing lights and the pretty colors. It's about having the transformation happening in your life and the fact that you have this going with her. And sometimes it can be gentle nudges. Sometimes it can be, as I said, synchronicity or dreams. Dreams are a big thing. Sometimes people will say they know they dreamed about her, but they don't remember what she said. That's okay because she's speaking to your spirit and you don't have to remember consciously. And remember that in dreams, she may take another form. She may not look like what exactly you think she should look like, or it may be an owl or another animal you see. She will ask you to change. Um, and this is not saying that you have to change overnight, but she wants you to get rid of the programming that keeps you from being your true self. She wants you to be unapologetically you. And that's not saying that you're not partly you right now. It just depends on how much you've been stuck in what society's told you. Um, and I know, again, growing up in the 60s and early 70s, I thought all kinds of things I was supposed to be and put all kinds of stuff on myself. Again, I was part of a traditional church, and that programmed me in certain ways. Um, and I won't say that I'm done deprogramming from everything. It's a lifelong experience. So it's not a light switch. It is a transformative journey that she will take you on. So some details. If you don't understand what she's saying, ask. And what I mean by that is if you have a dream or you get synchronicities, don't wonder. One, use your gnosis, use your inner mind, your intuition, and also ask her. Ask her to make it more clear. If you're in an abusive or negative relationship, she often brings about change. She may bring an escalating of issues. She may show you something that you didn't really see before. I've seen this a lot of times in people where um, they're called to change. Um, your altar, again, is very personal and can contain anything you like that fits your relationship and the aspect of Lilith you're working with. A statue or image along with a candle are typical. You can add things like a wand, an athame, a cup, a pentacle, images of skulls. I have a quartz crystal skull on my altar. And it's not about death, it's about the idea of um, the body of light, which is very common in Gnosticism, and transformation. And that's why I have this crystal skull. Owls, snakes, etc. Anything is possible. Anything you can imagine or have intuition for is possible. But again, it doesn't have to be super complex. And if you can't even do the candle, I know there's people in situations they can't have an open flame, then that's okay. Um, do what you can because your relationship and you having a touch point is more important than the big elaborate display. And don't worry about cost of things. That's one thing I've heard people like, well, I can't afford a whole bunch of stuff. Then make it, use something simple or put something again very simple on the altar that doesn't cost money because she's not asking you to become broke trying to work with her. That's definitely not her paradigm either. She does accept offerings, and it depends on the aspects you're working with. For instance, I give water, I give her wine or other alcohol, I'll give her food, eggs, perfume, um, because I work with more of the compassionate aspects. I know with the more severe aspects, some people give blood, sexual fluids, bones, and other items. I do want to call out that if you are giving blood, don't watch, horror movies and think that you have to slash your whole hand open. Um, be, safe. Use a diabetic lancet. Use a needle. You only need a couple drops. You don't need to cut your whole hand open. Um, and really, she doesn't. The only reason she cares about these things is because you're giving them. You're building your relationship. I don't believe she needs any of them. Um, she's she's a goddess in my opinion. And these things are not, I mean, she doesn't need to eat or drink. She doesn't need blood. But I do believe that when you give of these things, it's a connection to you. And that's why it's got power. And I'm not dissing anybody's belief in giving offerings or in other traditions, other entities, you may need to do that to work with them. But in the case of Lilith, it's about your transformation. That's her biggest desire. But these other things can be given as an object, like your altar is an object of devotion. Any of these other things are an act of devotion and creating a connection to her. So what she really desires is you. She wants you to communicate with her and work for your transformation. Anything extra is a show of your commitment, but not the base of what she desires. Be on a journey of transformation, and you are walking with her. That is the crux of the relationship. While we're still being recorded, I wanted to see if anybody wanted to add anything to that, and then I'll take it off recording so we can have a discussion amongst ourselves that won't be on YouTube. And if you don't want to say anything while we're recording, that's totally okay. Just want to give you the chance. Okay, let me stop the recording. Everybody who's watching this on YouTube, thank you for watching. And we will have more content, of course, about every 5 days. And we will have another meeting recording probably next month. Talk to you later.